This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Martin from the Accelerator team at Robson Adler, and this is our next episode of Business Stuff. I'm here with Allison Thompson of Sintons, and we're going to talk about managing business debts. Allison, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much. Do you want to just tell us who you are first?
Allison Thompson. I'm the head of debt recovery at Sintons. We're part of the wider dispute resolution team.
Okay, and dispute's a good term because there's quite a lot of dispute in debt collection, isn't there?
There is, just a tad.
So is it worth just giving us a brief synopsis of where we are? Because we've got the cost of living crisis, businesses aren't immune to that. No. Things are going up, it affects business. Yeah. Businesses are struggling, cash flow wise, there's a whole load of issues.
There is, yeah.
But strangely, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of support that's prevented a lot of these things from causing the same effect they might have done.
Yeah, but all those preventative measures that were put in place by government really supported businesses, and that was really welcomed during the COVID time. But we're now saying that those preventative measures have dropped off, and we're seeing businesses really struggle, and we're having to pay back loans to government. So there's still that pressure on businesses to recover what they're owed and their invoices, and you've also got businesses who may well have been facing insolvency before COVID hit, have then been kept afloat a little bit during that time with the help.
Almost artificially.
It is.
Sounds like an awful thing to say, but
it is.
They should have failed.
They should have failed, and now we'll see those.
And they'll definitely go now, won't they?
Yeah, and so the stats are a bit skewed, where you've got those, you've got to always have in mind that there is that percentage of businesses who would have gone under anyway. Yeah. But it's still a struggle for a lot of other businesses who, as you say, cost of living, it is more difficult to recover their invoices and to get paid, and they're faced with the electric bills and everything. Businesses have to pay electric and their utilities, so they're faced with the same pressures as you would at home.
And often you've got a workforce now demanding more money, but you're afraid to put your prices up in case nobody buys your stuff anymore.
Absolutely.
And so all of the things that keep business owners awake at night anyway are kind of amplified at the moment, I think.
And I think as the UK recession looms, we're going to find it impacts the smaller businesses. I think they're going to be the highest at risk. Majority
is that
of them.
Because they've got less of a reserve, less of a buffer?
Absolutely.
Okay then. There was just for reference, there was a statistic on a report that I saw, I think from Xero, who make accounting software. Their figures show that something like 4 months of a year, the average SME is in negative cash flow. Mm-hmm. So we could have a seasonal business. Let's say summer is your good spell, or the middle of the year is your good spell, and winter is where you die off. Yeah. If they're struggling, then their 4 months is coming up just at the time when the energy cap's going to be increased on.
Absolutely.
It's going to be carnage, isn't it?
It is going to be carnage, and I think
could be.
Well, could, yes.
We're going to try and ease some of these pressures.
Yeah, and I think and we've seen that even the businesses who may have kept kept going and things, but COVID have impacted even the businesses who may well have, in normal times, you would never expect those businesses to suffer. Yeah. But because COVID has impacted so many different areas and so many different sectors, it's the businesses who may not have necessarily expected to be impacted by difficulties.
So strong coffee shop chains who are in train stations, for instance. Yeah, exactly. Like Smiths have got stores in all of the street, but
the sandwich shops, people weren't in offices. Yeah. But we've seen that on the TV, on the news and things. But they're perfect examples of businesses where we may not have expected them to suffer.
We would have ordinarily had a constant footfall because people had to go A to B, and they normally did something along the way. Okay. So let's just assume that we're speaking here to businesses who are raising invoices, that this isn't your cash on sale. This is people who are giving credit. You might think, well, I don't give credit, but anyone who raises an invoice and waits for a payment is given credit.
Credit. It is, yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Misconception.
Even if people normally pay as soon as they get it, you're still giving credit.
You are.
Where do we start then? Because it seems like something that is often overlooked here is that before you raise an invoice or you work with someone, you should really make sure you know who you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
You should know your customer.
You do. You have to know your customer. You have to know. You have to do your credit checks. You have to know who, whether they're a limited company, whether or not they're non-limited, sole traders, whatever. You just need to build that little picture so you are confident that you know who you're doing business with and who will be responsible for paying that invoice, because we do see instances where an invoice will be prepared and that customer will say, oh, can you just send it to Joe Blogs or whatever? Well, that's not who you've done business with. You have to invoice the person that you've done business with.
Or as a minimum, you've got to meet the person and agree the one you're going to send the invoice to.
Absolutely.
Make sure they're expecting it and the note's coming and they're going to pay it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You mentioned there about knowing your customer. So credit checks might seem scary and you're not going to credit check every customer, but maybe the first time you work with someone new or if particularly a big order comes in from someone who's never ordered big.
If it's anything out of the ordinary, there's anything out of the ordinary, some sectors are very good at liaising with each other, and I'm thinking sort of building merchants, things like that. They're very good at liaising with each other. So
Justin's will tell Wix that Dave's struggling at the minute.
Absolutely. So you've got that sort of fallback, in the sense if you're having a conversation with a fellow trader, you might well know that someone's on the lookout for credit, and you won't want to do business with that person or whatever. So you've got that fallback, but if it's anything out of the ordinary, big order, whatever it might be, then do the credit checks. But there's also that, particularly at the minute, try and do them a little bit regularly as well. You might well do business with someone for 2 years, but they might be still struggling. The creditworthiness at the minute of a business goes up and down, up and down.
So build into your systems to say,
those checks.
They've always paid for 10 years, but let's just, because a credit check's a couple of quid now, isn't it? It's not a massive thing now, is it? Yeah,
it's a small.
I say a couple of quid. It's not massive, is it?
It's not, and it's a small price to pay to make sure that order worth, it could be £50,000, £100,000, to make sure you're going to get paid for that. It's a small price to pay.
Because you could go from, massive order, we're saved, to then not get the money, and it's actually that huge order is the thing that kills you, isn't it, as a business?
And I think at this point, we've got, economic climate. It's very challenging, and it's very, there is the you might think, I'll just do this, I'll just do it, and then because I haven't got time to sort all that credit check stuff out, I'll just do it.
I need the order.
And and there's that desire to push on the business, but don't fall foul to that. Make sure that those credit checks are done, because it's those sorts of situations that fraudsters, whatever it might be, take advantage of. So
you mentioned something else as well, and something that happens a lot is, you said about knowing your customer, and again you mentioned company, not company. There's a reason for that, isn't there? Because if you invoice a company, you can only normally seize that company's assets, assuming the director has played fair. But you might know Dave, who's great, and Dave's always been your customer, but Dave's limited company is where the next order comes from. Hold on, Dave's limited company might have no trading history, it might be in debt, it might be about to go down. You've got to make, again, it's important to understand who you can claim a legal debt from, isn't it?
It is, and if it's a limited company, you can ask for a personal guarantee from one of the directors, which I always say, if you're uneasy about doing business with that particular business, that customer you maybe heard on the grapevine, they're not always reliable, whatever, ask for the personal guarantee. And if that director has got nothing to hide, no worries at all, there shouldn't be an issue.
Why would they not?
Why would they not?
So, I mean, it doesn't mean that they won't say, well, I can order there and not have it, well, fine. But you've got to make your own judgment on risk, haven't you?
You have.
Okay then. So let's assume we know who we're doing business with, then Dave came in, he's placed the order, we know it's Dave who's going to get the invoice, we've credit checked him, everything's fine. There's still a lot of things you can get wrong here, isn't there, along the way? You've still got to understand make sure everyone agrees the same terms and conditions, for instance. Do you know who's going to invoice when, what the trigger points are?
Get your terms and conditions spot on, get them right from the outset. Have your terms for payment in there. Penalties, if someone's going to pay you late, you want to put some penalties in there. And you can also include that on your invoice. We see invoices where, you've just got a date, it's on a bit of letterhead, and that's about it. But
there's nothing. I get invoices with no address on and no bank details.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I couldn't send you a cheque if I wanted. And there's no bank to send any money to. What the hell am I supposed to do here?
Have as much information on that invoice as you possibly can. So you want the date of the invoice, you want the date you expect payment by, you want your bank details. If you want it buybacks, that's your preferred payment method, have that on there. And then on the bottom or on the back, have your penalty clauses. If it's not paid by this date, we reserve the right to charge X, Y, Z. You can have whatever penalties, 3% above base rate, whatever. There is a default mechanism for business-to-business debts, which comes under the late payment legislation. But have it on the terms, have it in your terms.
But even better, agree those terms before you raise the invoice. So if you're sending a quote, make sure that's all on the quote, on the proposal as well.
Absolutely.
It's pointless someone going, oh yeah, I'm happy with that. Oh, I thought I would just drop some cash off when I fancied. That's not what we agreed.
Absolutely.
We agreed when I did that, you would pay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay
then. So what's the kind of thing? So if you're agreeing this in advance, you're going to agree what the trigger points are for raising an invoice. If it's delivery of goods, the invoice will be with it presumably. Yeah. But if someone's expecting to have an account and pay at the end of the month, you need to know that, because you might not have that idea. You might have different ideas. And
the terms of business have to be what suits your business, not the customer's business. So if it can be payment on delivery, whatever, and you can't change that. So again, going back to knowing your customer, if you're a bit suspicious about when you're going to get paid or whatever, then why not change your terms to suit that customer base?
Or a different service line, or a different product type,
absolutely,
or if you're in different sectors or industries, well, not all sectors are the same. So,
but always remember, it's your terms, and it has to suit your business, and because it's affecting the profitability of your business. You've got a situation where you've spent so much time in the concept and the business planning. Why wouldn't you get your terms of payment right?
Yeah, absolutely. Penalties are an interesting one, because I've got to be honest, in my experience, I rarely see these. I know a lot of the trades and trade suppliers will have discount for early payment. Yeah. But I haven't really seen anyone really apply. Do they get applied much in your experience? Or?
They do in my area, because
you tell them to.
I tell them to, yeah.
So my clients apply them all.
We apply different penalties because we deal with all different sectors, different customer bases. We apply different penalties. So what I've got to do is I've got to read through those terms that you've had with the customer to decide what penalties can be applied. As I say, the standard default for payment terms is 30 days. So if you don't put anything in there,
if you don't put a due date on, it can be assumed to be 30 days.
30 days.
That's interesting. I always just assume 30 days, in not in Robson Adler, but in my own life. If I get any work done, I just assume I'm going to pay it at the end of the month. Or whatever. But I've found small businesses will wait a week before they send you an invoice. They'll send you an invoice, then they'll ring up and say, why have you not paid yet?
Yes.
It's like, well, I've got it, I'll pay at the end of the month. Like, no, I want money now. It's like, you should really say pay on receipt then.
Yes.
Because I'll just do a pay run at the end of the month, on like the properties, for instance. Like, for me Sparkies and me gas guys, or whatever, I just pay them at the end of the month.
Yeah. But their payment terms are different. But I haven't told
their
you.
payment terms are made up depending on whether they ran out of money or not, it seems.
Well,
which isn't a good way to raise invoices,
yeah,
is it?
you can't do that either. That's the opposite. You've got to have set payment terms. So you can't. Whilst you can choose your payment terms and state that,
As long as
you
it's
can't
stated,
you can't change them halfway through.
Yeah.
So you can't do that.
And I suspect this is part of where we get into a lot of trouble later when we talk about how to enforce a debt. But let's assume we know our customer, we've agreed the terms, we've invoiced in accordance with what we said we would do, we delivered the product or the service. Let's assume that we've got a customer who says, well, I'm not paying because I'm not happy. You've got
a query on it.
Yeah, so let's say they query. Now, it could just be querying just a delay. Who knows? But also there could be an issue with the thing that you sent or the service you did. What's best practice here then?
Just deal with those queries immediately. You can incorporate.
You can't do it quick enough, can you?
You can't, no, because the longer you delay that, then you're not going to get paid. There isn't a genuine reason to say, well, you can't get. I'm not going to pay you because X, Y, Z. Payment can't be withheld, but in the general good practice is, well, you don't expect to get paid until that job is finished.
Yeah, I mean,
so that is good practice, and
you should expect to deliver the service or the product
you
said you were good in as well.
Absolutely,
be a bit harsh to chase payment for something you didn't quite
exactly,
do.
Exactly. So, but you have to attend to those queries immediately. If you have it in your terms and conditions or just in your personal good practice, deal with them within 24, 48 hours. The sooner you respond, it can be resolved quicker. So,
because if someone is just playing for time, it failed.
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Because you didn't give them any more time. Yeah.
And I think if you've worked with that customer, you'll have a feeling of whether or not it is a delay tactic or whether there is a genuine query somewhere.
Especially if it's a repeat,
absolutely.
You get a feel for the kind of person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do we probably a little bit off the direction of flow here, but a lot of big businesses will have things like 60 or 90 day payment terms, won't they? And they'll just say, if you supply us, tough, you're going to wait 90 days.
Yeah.
Again, if you're going into a relationship like that, you need to know that, don't you?
You do, and because you need to know that because you then have to build it into your financial forecast, because it will affect the profitability of the business month to month. And whilst I say you're working to your terms, if you accept to work with that business and you accept their terms, then you're stuck with that.
You've still agreed, haven't you?
You've agreed. Yeah. So it's
because
if you're something that's to be agreed at the start.
I nearly picked the supermarket name there, but let's just say if you're a big supermarket, you go, well, this is how we work. You as a tiny little supplier, you're not going to have any. You can shout and kick the doors as much as you want, but they're not going to care a lot.
No, they're not. And it's
wrong,
the judgment.
And they shouldn't do that. But it's the reality. You need to know that going in.
And it's the judgment of, do you want to do that work, or do you not want to do that work? And I appreciate that. A lot of businesses where and currently are up against it. Their backs against the wall, saying, well, am I going to forego this big contract at the risk of my business going under, or am I going to just do it at their terms? Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
If you've got nothing else on your desk to do,
you would be doing it. You would. Yeah. So, but you still have to build that in so that you know for your forecast, and it affects all of the business profitability.
So okay then. So let's assume we didn't get any queries, or we did. Either way, credit control is the next thing I think we need to think about. So we did everything right. We've sent the bill out. What's best practice here for people? Because a lot of people have no idea here. They just think, well, I've sent the bill. Why have you not paid?
Yeah, credit control is imperative. Good credit control. And again, going back to, you've spent a lot of time doing a business plan with this concept, this business idea. You spend so much time doing that. Why wouldn't you have good credit control in there?
Not as many people have good business plans as you might think, by the Alison. We get some harebrained schemes to walk through these doors.
Well, I'll bring mine next week.
Yeah. But let's either way, you've spent a lot of time
absolutely
setting up, doing the thing you've done.
Yeah.
Why the hell would you not build in a bit of time to chase your money in?
If you're not going to get paid, then that's the catalyst for your business going under. So
the start of the end, isn't it?
It is. So credit control, you should be looking at it on a weekly basis, if not daily basis. Have a good record of the invoices that you've issued, the invoices that have been paid, and the invoices that are you waiting to be paid. And, even pick up the phone to the customer and say, I issued this invoice on X date, it's due for payment next week, next Thursday, 7 days. Can you just make sure that it's on your payment run?
Just checking everything's all right.
Yeah.
They might just say, oh, well, actually, it's going to be the week after, but is that all right? Make a note.
Absolutely.
Check the week after. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You haven't got to then just like run at them, and have a go. But you need to know this because businesses are managing cash flow.
And as you say, larger businesses, they run weekly or monthly backs runs. Well, that might mean you might not get paid on that time. And again, as much as you shout and scream, if you're on a backs run, then there's not much you can...
And that's a good tip, actually, because we tend to make our payments probably twice a month. Mm-hmm. But if you think you can just send an invoice in and then go, but why have you not paid? Now, we do sometimes, depending on who it is. If it's a small local supplier, we try and help them. Yeah. But we can't just sit and pay every invoice as it comes in the door.
No,
so we tend to have a couple of runs a month. Mm-hmm. But if, let's say it's a business who only does it once a month, you need to know what their cut-off is.
Yes.
Because if you're doing regular work, you want to it's a bit like get your timesheet in if you want your overtime, isn't it?
Yeah,
you've got to get the invoice in
before that backs run goes.
They might pay at the end of the month, but they might have a cut-off of the 20th.
Absolutely.
If you did an invoice, you've got to wait then 5 or 6 weeks, haven't you?
Yeah. So you need to be having that conversation with your customer. And I think, and some people don't like picking up the phone, so just drop an email to the head of financial, head of accounts. Drop them an email saying, can you let us know, can you confirm that this will be included in your next payment run, whatever. Yeah. And no, again, if you're doing business with good customers, they're not going to mind you doing that.
They'll answer the phone and say, hi Alison, no worries, no, it's on the run.
Building that relationship, which then also goes back.
Or they might say, we didn't get your invoice. All right, I'll get a copy over.
Absolutely.
And they might not have got the invoice.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're waiting for payment on something they never got in the first place.
It just heads off all of those queries, doesn't it?
Means it can't happen.
And again, you're solidifying that relationship as well for future business. So, it's
setting the terms.
Absolutely.
Setting the tone even.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's interesting how you said people don't like picking the phone up. Do you have people who come in and go, Alison, you've got to help me get this money? Well, what if they said, I havenn't spoken to them?
We do have that because you've got...
Surely someone doesn't try to sue someone until you would think they would want to at least try to speak to them.
It depends on the other side. It depends who their customer has been. If they've been a very difficult customer, that relationship has completely broken down.
Absolutely right.
So they don't want to pick up the phone and say, I want to chase this payment. So yeah, we do get that. And that's sad, I think, if that relationship has broken down to that degree. Yeah.
But it's important as well, you said there, so if you do pick the phone up, you should evidence that as well, shouldn't you?
Yes, you should.
You have a customer file away, whether it's digital, electronic, a bit of paper on your desk, it doesn't matter, because at some point someone's going to ask you,
did you chase this?
What did you do to try and get this money in? And that brings us on to the next bit. So we've dealt with queries, we've done good credit control, we've checked it weekly, if not more, depending on the volume and the sector you're in. But let's just assume that you've tried everything and they're just not paying you. And we're going to speak to someone like you, or we're going to go to small claims, whatever we're going to do, but we're going to try and enforce this debt. What are people's options then?
There is a system in the court process called Money Claims Online, MCOL for short. As solicitors, we don't use it because it is set up as a litigant in person regime. So
it's like a self-service.
Yeah, self-service type of thing. Unfortunately for us, we see a lot of clients who then have tried to do that, but then come to us when it all goes wrong. Right. Mainly because they haven't done the things at the start, knowing your customer, dealing with the queries and all of that. And the MCOL system doesn't allow for all of that. So if you've done something wrong,
like quite a rigid.
It's very rigid.
It doesn't allow for I haven't done that, but I've done this. There's no flexibility.
No, it's very rigid. You're claiming £50 off Joe Blogs, and that's it. And there's It does, you know, so once it falls out of that regime, it then gets very complicated, and then they have to, you know, a client has to come and say, oh, it's, you know, it's all gone wrong, sort of thing.
Because the reason we mentioned all of these steps and these things, it wasn't just because we think they're a good idea. They're good practice. You're more likely to get paid, first of all.
Yeah.
But it's easier to collect if you have done all of these things.
It's preventative. It's preventing. Yeah. It's preventing the pitfalls. Yeah. That's, you know, some people find themselves in.
And a lot of these things aren't complex. Having a sheet on the back of an invoice or a supplement on an electronic invoice that says, here's me T's and C's.
Yes. You
set it up once. Mm-hmm. It's not like you've got to write these things out every time.
No, I mean, even you put it on your website, and when you send an email to the customer, here's a link to us at T's and C's. Yeah. If you don't come back to, you know, if you want a paper copy, let me know. If you don't come back to it and we commence work, we'll take that as an acceptance of the T's and C's. Yeah, something like that.
So it doesn't have to be as complex as people are.
Not at all. Yeah. No.
But let's okay then. So we're off to court. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking of LA law from the 80s here. And I'm sitting in front of a judge.
That shows how old we are.
It's on. Well, I didn't throw you under that bus there yet, but you threw yourself under the bus.
Yeah.
So, and you know, just imagine there's two people having a bit argy-bargy on behalf of their respective clients, and there's a judge. Does stuff get to court, or does it settle out of court? Or
it does. In some cases it does, but we personally try our best to settle out of court, because the whole point of the small claims regime is to try and negate the getting to court, trying to negate the costs of escalating out of control. You know, sort of trying that negotiation at that. So, you know. And really, that's what every lawyer would be trying to do in small claims. So once you've got all of that in place, you know, in all of your terms and conditions and things, then it shouldn't be as complex. But before you get to court, the first step you've got to do is send a letter before action, and
we're going to sue you in 7 days, last chance. Yeah.
Now, people do sometimes make mistakes with that, because several years ago the court regime changed and brought in new protocols for how we handle debt recovery. And depending on who your customer is, going right back to knowing who your customer, dictates on how your LBA should be formatted. LBA? Letter before action. So that dictates how that's got to be formulated. So a lot of people, again,
get that wrong.
You're
trying to chase a debt from a customer who wasn't their customer, who they didn't agree what it was in the first place. They haven't answered any queries. They didn't set the T's and C's, and then they don't even tell them that they're suing them, right?
So
all these things are much harder to unwind after the event as well, aren't they?
Because what you're doing is you're going back to the very start of something, and sometimes if you haven't got that underpinned point of knowing who the customer is, you might well not be able to claim anything at all. Yeah. Because you've got no one to claim from. So you get the LBA right, and then if you do end up in court, the judge is happy because you've set out all of your stall at the very end.
But you shouldn't be in court, or you'll struggle in court, I suspect, if you turn up and you haven't got all of these things lined up that we've talked about. You haven't got a copy of the invoice, confirmation that you spoke to Dave on the 12th of July, you can prove if you need to. But you know, if you haven't got this history, the judge is just going to go, well, I haven't got any evidence here.
Absolutely.
Who do I believe? And I mean, that can't be a good position.
The risk there is that the judge, finds in favour of the defendant, and you've not only lost out on an unpaid invoice, you risk the defendant claiming their costs from you.
That was one of my next questions. Yeah. Who pays for all of this?
You do. So
what if you get your money then? Does
the defendant would have to, if you've gone to court, the judge has found that yes, you're owed all of this money and you've got a perfect right to it, and what you'll end up with a court judgment. Now that effectively, and I say this to counsel all the time, that's just a piece of paper. It's
not the money, is it?
It's not.
You don't walk out of court with a bucket of money.
You don't.
It just means you have to pay.
Yeah, and a customer can still then, or the defendant can still then not pay you. So you're then looking at enforcement of that judgment.
Yes, so actually when I talked about enforcing the debt, the terminology was wrong really, wasn't it? All that done is agreed the debt.
Mm-hmm.
You then have to enforce, and what's that, like the county sheriff or something?
It's in the olden days, in our day, they were called sheriffs. They're now called High Court Enforcement Officers.
Right. Okay.
But there's lots of different ways to enforce a debt. If you've got a debtor who is not a business and is employed, then you can go for an attachment of their earnings.
Yeah.
If they've got a property, so going back to a personal guarantee from a director, if they own a property, we can put a charge on that property. A charge
so you can't raise money or sell it without
paying
clearing the
that
debt.
Yeah. So there's various, and again, it's about knowing who that customer is, knowing what their assets are, to know
before you start this whole merry
whole
dance.
process,
Yeah.
to know exactly where the best place is to get that payment from.
And there's probably people watching or listening to this who are thinking, you should just keep saying know your customer. I've known Dave for you. But it really is critically important.
It's crucial. It is absolutely crucial, because you may well have known Dave for 20 years, but you don't know how well his business is performing at the minute.
Yeah.
And the landscape
so
is
the
changing.
current version of Dave,
yes,
isn't it? It's not,
yeah.
I've known Dave. Dave would never do that.
And he might.
Dave's backed my boat against the wall.
Absolutely. He might not
Dave's...
want to do that, but his business is in such a complex situation that he might not have another option. And as I say, the landscape's changing so fast that you just can't rely on.
Because actually, it might not be Dave. Dave's credit control itself might be terrible.
Yes.
And
indeed.
he might just get bumped.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter whether he's your best mate or not.
Absolutely, because it's a domino effect.
If he hasn't got the money, it doesn't matter whether he wants to give you it or not.
And then you've got bills to pay, so you have to have that money in to pay your creditors. So it is a domino effect, and that's how our business world works. Yeah. So that's how the economy, goes around.
We'll normally finish then, Alison, on what's the biggest mistake that you see people making in this whole arena, everything we've talked about there. What's the most common thing that you just think, if I could eradicate that, life would be easier?
Two things, if I'm allowed.
Oh, well,
yeah,
sorry. Typical.
And you've said it, knowing your customer.
Clause 1, clause 2.
Knowing your customer, but the other one is late payments, not jumping on them. If Joe Bloggs hasn't...
And that people don't jump on a late payment, and they should.
Yeah. If Dave says to you, oh yeah, I know it should have been paid today, but can I just have another 7 days? Then use some element of judgment on that, granted, but no, don't give him another 7 days.
Try
and
definitely don't keep selling stuff and providing services to someone who you're not comfortable with.
That you're not getting paid from. We do see delivery of goods. Dave hasn't paid the bill, but then we're still delivering goods to Dave. Why? Stop sending goods to that guy when he's not paying.
Because that's your only leverage, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Why would you just keep sending more stuff to the guy you never paid to?
Yeah, and don't do anything. Don't do anything that isn't agreed. If Dave says, "Oh, I forgot to ask for 20 pallets of X. Can you just throw them on the order?" Well, yeah, get that in writing or whatever. Or if you think, oh well, I'll just do that little job for them, you're not going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get paid for it, and you can't claim for it because it hasn't been agreed and it's not in your estimate.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine services is where that probably goes more off the rails.
Yeah.
Can you come and cut me grass on, do the hedge while you're there? Well, the quote says cut the grass.
Absolutely.
There's no evidence that you cut the hedge at all because it was a call. How the hell are you going to get that enforced if there's no evidence that you did it?
That's it, yeah.
Because if you're standing in front of a court and you go, honest governor, I cut the hedge. No, it's just your word against theirs.
It's just not going to wash. It's not going to wash with a judge. So, get everything you possibly can in writing or in an email.
Which is where, to go back to something you said earlier, in the exciting rush of an order, it's easy to forget all of these basics. Isn't it?
It is very easy, and I do understand it's very difficult times. Businesses are trying to keep their head above water, so we're just trying to get as much money in as we possibly can, but don't be tempted.
Yeah, and we spoke before we started it might have even been you, like I say, but someone years ago said it's not rude to ask for your own money.
No, it's not. And it is your money.
Because at this point it's your money, it's not their money.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know... And
you didn't agree to loan them money, did you?
And your creditor's not going to wait.
Absolutely.
You've got your bills to pay, so, you know, you need it in.
And on this shouting for your money, if Dave hasn't paid 10 people, you may as well be the awkward one. Because he'll get you off his back first, won't he?
Yeah, it's a very
old
old saying.
And the poor sap who doesn't chase, well, they're the one who's never going to get there.
Very old saying, those who shout loudest get paid first, and it's so true.
Yeah. Alison, thank you very much. That's been fantastic. And I'm sure our viewers and listeners have hopefully got a lot from that. Even if they think, well, this is all basic, it's common sense, it really is. But Alison wouldn't have a job if you didn't all keep getting this wrong.
That's very true. That's fair to say,
yeah.
yes.
So let's get Alison out of work. Let's get her, you know, she's got a deck chair like the rest of us. She wants to sit on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll find something to do and would be happy if there was no business debt to chase.
Absolutely.
Okay. Don't tell her employer she said that. I hope you've enjoyed that episode. As always, reach out to Alison if you've got any issues. Reach out to us if you're managing your cash flow and it's just not working for you. But leave comments, give us a like, give us a review. We appreciate all of your feedback. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.